Hey guys, welcome to yet another episode of Arthur's podcast. And today I've got my friend Shihara here. Shihara is a close friend of mine, and she's got a lot of interesting stories to tell us, predominantly about how it is going to a state owned university and her experiences there. And I think that's quite crucial right now because a lot of people are deciding, which pathway do you go? Do you go left or right? Do you take the path of staying in Sri Lanka, pursuing your education here, or to look abroad and fly abroad? So thank you, Shiara, for being here. Shiara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we go ahead?
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Shihara Fernando, and I am 22 years old and undergraduate at the University of Colombo Faculty of Arts. So I'm hoping to specialize in economics, and I'm also doing an LLB on the side with the University of London. Apart from that, I volunteered a bunch of, or by bunch, I have to like handful of organizations, and I'm interested a lot in environment management and reconciliation and communications and stuff like that. So that's basically about me. I'm sure that I'm like missed a bunch of things, but yeah, in short, that's sort of the introduction to myself.
Where do we start? I mean, obviously, I wanted to have a sheet of question, something like that lined up, but then I realized that's not how our conversations generally go. Starts out with, I want to talk to you for 5 minutes to clarify something, but 2 hours and 15 minutes later, we're deciding and contemplating on life. That's 2 hours. No, God, 2 hours is a minimum. I think we had 3 hour plus once.
That was also like in the middle of my exam.
And I think during SLMUN. For your information, we both shared the Sri Lankan Model United Nations of 2021, technically conducted in 2022. All right, so questions galore. That's where we're heading. Right, so first question is, why did you choose the degree you chose, like the pathway? Why you chose what you chose?
That's actually a really good question because my specialization in university was something that was selected not because I really wanted it, but it's because of the logistical and like impracticality of pursuing what I really wanted in Sri Lanka. So I really wanted, but my passion was in environmental management and geography, and I was full on headed for that degree at the very first few months of university. That was like last year, and then halfway into actually doing the subject, I realized that one, it's taught in Sinhala, which is very unfair because we chose English medium. And I know for a fact that even if you were to specialize, like half the lectures, even especially in the specialization years, they're going to be conducted in Sinhala, and then the material will be selected in Sinhala, and they will not give sufficient support for English speaking crowd as well. That's one. Second thing is because in Sri Lanka, if you really want to specialize in geography, there aren't many really good employment opportunities. So I'm not planning on migrating. I want to stay here and work. I'm probably insane to a lot of people, but that's what I'm planning on doing. So, yeah. So I thought, I can learn environment stuff for my master's, so might as well choose economics. Not that I don't like it, just that it's not my first choice. But, as I started to do economics as a special, which I also did for A-levels, I realized it's still interesting, it's very useful, and it's, multifaceted, so you can really apply it in so many ways. So yeah, that was really my reason for selecting economics as my special, not because of any.
Sure, I wanted to pick on something very quickly. So I've spoken to my dad and a few other people who I know who studied the engineering side and studied medicine, and they told me their problem with regards to language was quite different. In that, it wasn't very friendly for those who spoke the mother languages of Sri Lanka. So that is either Sinhala or Tamil. It was primarily English. It's quite surprising to see that it was the opposite for you. Is that unique to this course, or is that a problem that we might see a division amongst languages?
That's actually very interesting. So I think medicine and engineering, right? Okay, so I think with medicine and engineering, because every single technicality is like done in English, I guess you speaking your mother tongue really doesn't help you. So all the lecturers who are teaching rather, they would prefer you to know like head on English, right? As opposed to you knowing Sinhala and Tamil or whatever. Whereas in the Faculty of Arts, what happens is predominantly people who join the Faculty of Arts are those from the outskirts of Colombo, and even within Colombo, not the Colombo crowd, not.
The traditional set.
Yeah. So basically, the professors, I mean, this is not unique. This is just for certain departments. I'm not saying all the departments of the University of Colombo Faculty of Arts is biased towards the Sinhala speaking or the Tamil speaking crowd. But certain departments, they are very comfortable with Sinhala. They don't feel the need to make an extra effort in speaking English, right? But obviously, the reality is that even in meteorology or even in geography, half these terms are in English, but they don't really feel the need to do English like that. So yeah, there is a lot of, like, I would say, biases towards people who speak Sinhala as opposed to speaking English. Because even, like, best example, right? I asked, 'cause I never joined lectures because I never understood what's going on. Not to say I don't understand Singlish, just that for me it's hard to really like translate it in my head because they're very technical words, right? I asked my assistant lecturer, "Hi, like, can I get extra like classes and lessons because cartography is something I'm very finding difficult to do." Um, his straight up reply was, "I'm sorry, we only offer it in Sinhala, like even though you chose English medium. You can go to like a bookshop and buy these resource materials so you can understand better." And I was like, I mean, if I can do that, why did I come to you, right? Like,
Now, why would you take the time and effort to actually come there, right?
exactly. I mean, of course, I can read and Google and get everything to myself, but I mean, if I'm asking you for help, that's out of genuine concern, and so
I mean, my stance on a degree and languages is this, right? Primary education, a lot of the times, following your mother tongue at least is fine. It's good. And but when it comes to higher education, it makes more sense, at least for the students, to have a degree that's more, how do I say, which would make more sense in all regards, right? If you want to, I don't know, go abroad, or establish these sorts of multinational systems that we plan on doing, it makes a lot of sense for us to have something that is provided in English. And I mean, look, see, I'm not saying that we should have it in our mother language. That's it would be further from the truth. A lot of countries like Germany and many of the countries actually require us to, if we are, for instance, to go there to learn their language. But the thing is, what the difference between here and there is their education system is so advanced, and it's so integrated within their growing fields, that English would seem inferior, or an English based student would seem more inferior to them than their own national. So that's where they stand. And where we haven't achieved that sort of standard yet, I think it's more advisable for us to have an option where we allow, either pathways. What do you think about that?
yeah, you make a really valid point there, right? So again, like if you go to Germany, as you rightly said, you need to know German language to be in university as well, right? It's not to say that English is completely out of the table. It is there, but German is given preference. But in Sri Lanka, even if you look at the private sector, now it's very, very rare that you have like a all singular kind of corporate entity or all Tamil corporate entity. Like it's mostly English, right? So if you're going to go into such fields, right, even in the government sector, you still need to be fluent in two languages at a minimum. If you know Tamil, if you know Sinhala, depending on what your like native languages, that's additional advantage. But any sector that you go into, English is where the direction of a narrative comes into play. Like it's always English. We don't have like a strong business sector that's reliant on Sinhala because we are like Sinhalese is a very unique language only to Sri Lanka. Tamil is of course there in India, but then again, if you look at our native languages, they are not something that's widely spoken throughout the world.
Yeah, even through India, it's not something that's widely spoken. I mean, if you take South India, yeah, even in South India, we have, like, Kerala, the people from
Malayali.
Malayalis, and people from Kerala. I think Telugu, Kannada, these are languages they speak even within the southern part of India. So it's hard for us to pinpoint and say, look, Tamil is a language that's even though Tamil is technically international, it's not really a language that's spoken across the world,
Yeah, and I feel like from doing that, you're holding people who can speak English at a bit of a disadvantage as well because you need to either slow down your lectures so you can clarify things to English and back and forth and whatnot. So then people who understand English, they can't really advance through. So you're not, for me, of course, this is not a boast of my like intellect or whatever. It's just that for me, I didn't learn anything new, you know. And because all the time it was like a reclarification of very small technicalities, and I feel like the infrastructure within universities to support non like people who are not too comfortable with English, I feel like can be better. I mean, I feel like that should also boil down, at least come from the secondary education system as well, because when you compare the Sinhala syllabus to the English syllabus that you get for O levels, right? For Sinhala, you learned like very academic literature analysis of, texts in Sinhala. For English, it's very simple. I mean, for us, for me who come from a Colombo school, it's very simple. I mean, even if you were to just look at the difference, you know that the Sinhala syllabus is much more complex than the English one. I feel like the practical application of language, that aspect is barely touched upon in the education system. So as a result, people are good at maybe reading and maybe writing certain sentences, but when you're practically applying it to a language or a conversation, that they really like they don't do it well.
I mean, I have a few friends who are Indians who follow the CBSE system, and obviously, as we know, the Indian students are able to follow their national curriculum even outside of India. And if you speak to those CBSE students, you understand the amount of attention to detail they place on languages that are international, or to be spoken across the world. So they require even Indians who have their native mother tongue. I think it's hard to point at a certain language in India where they have, if I'm not wrong, hundreds of languages. They give focus to languages for the preliminary purpose of allowing people to communicate, in the sense to communicate across the countries and across the world. That is something I did notice for sure, and I think it is important that we highlight on the whole language perspective. Sure, I also want to talk about something that's quite interesting regarding the education system, and that is access to education. And what I mean by that is physical access to higher education. We all know that higher education institutes exist in maybe 4 or 5 places. From what I can remember, I know Colombo, Peradeniya, Keleniya, Jaffna. These are places that I can name off the top of my head. But institutions, especially in a country where we are very much for government institutions, uh, how feasible do you think it is for us to have online programs or programs that are initiated from a mobile, or rather an institute of certain places that link back to university? What do you think about that?
I feel like, I mean, we have a lot of more state universities. I think we have about 20 plus, even though both of us, or rather you might not have heard a lot of. I mean, to be honest, I didn't know of this until like this year, right? So with that, I think one, people still long for the top tier universities in Sri Lanka. That's Colombo, Peradeniya, Muratua, Kalaniya, Japura, right? Why? Because the infrastructure is better, recognition is better, they have more facilities as opposed to maybe going to Rajarat University or Uvavelas University or whatever, right? So keeping that obvious note aside, even within our own state universities, the ones that we go to, online education system, I would say, has come a long way. I'm not going to completely negate the fact. I feel like it's the whole Moodle system is doing pretty well, but the way in which it's optimized and how it's really used can be much better. Like, I don't think they go to the full potential of using it. That's one. Second thing is, in terms of bandwidth, in our university, I think a really good initiative was they interviewed, or they did a survey on every single undergraduate to see what their bandwidth is like, what's their capacity, what's their network capacity in the area, so they have an understanding of the geographic location and how good the network is for them to conduct classes. So if they didn't have the sufficient amount of bandwidth, they would, I think the university gave laptops and they gave routers or whatnot. Right, so those kind of things did take place. But all in all, I feel like the University Grants Commission can do better in terms of providing network facilities, or at least having some sort of partnership with ISPs to give better network connection across the country. Because right now, even like I live in Muratua, right? Even for me, sometimes the bandwidth just goes off.
I know a lot about that.
Yeah, right. So that's the thing. So, and this is like Greater Colombo. Even in Colombo Central, sometimes depending on the ISP, it doesn't work. So, like this very basic facility that's there around the world should be better here. I feel, because right now we are going into a hybrid system. We are going into a fully online system as well. So even if there's another catastrophe in the future, be it pandemic, endemic, war, whatever it is, I mean, I hope not, we need to be prepared for the worst as well. So I feel like now people should invest a bit more in terms of networking and all of that. So I feel like switching to online education is okay for those of us who are privileged and have the financial capacity, but for the majority of the students who really don't have that, even if they do get a scholarship from elsewhere, their geographic location itself provides them for it to be a disadvantage because of the fact that network is not sufficient.
That is certainly a technical problem. I mean, like, I have a point with regards to what you talked about, affiliation with these top dog universities. I know it's not apples and oranges here, but we all know that institutes like Royal Institute and CFPS and a few more, I think RI and CFPS are the ones that I know pretty well about. A lot of people who come out of there, you open their LinkedIn. I studied at the University College London. I studied at the London School of Economics. I mean, no dig at them. You have your degree affiliated through that service, and it is a quality education that they provide there. But if people in Sri Lanka are content with that, are happy, or they think that it is valuable, why do you not think that a similar system for like a government institute, for instance, let's say we have maybe 30 computers in a rural part of Sri Lanka, a rural town, and there are live lectures from the directly telecasted lectures sent there. Students study there. Their answers are marked by maybe assistant lecturers. So they're technically still part of the University of Colombo. So do you think that would sort of solve the problem?
Um, I would say it would on a logistical note, right? But I also feel like I'm a strong advocate of having like a very holistic university culture. What I'm saying by that is, of course, like getting to university alone is a big deal. One, because it's not easy to get into state university. I'm not trying to say the education system is great and all. It's not. But I mean, it's still not easy to get into state university, right? Like I, for one, was like biting my nails at the time I got my results because I didn't know what I was going to get. Second thing is having a system is great, but I feel like universities should have a better hostel facilities and accommodative measures as well. So anyone who is outside Colombo can easily come in. So it's evenly spread out. Because right now, some hostels for University of Colombo is like in Ratmalan or like very far away from the university, and it's not the best. I feel like you should make that work a bit better for those who are living like far away can make it to university. And also I feel like even if lecturers can get the facility of getting transportation at times, that can also solve the problem, but that's a lot of public funds, and right now our budget is more equipped towards military as opposed to the education system, right? That, I mean, we have to agree with that. So I think it's just better budgeting to the higher education system and just taxation that's just going to up a lot of things. Because I feel like we can do It's just a matter of how you allocate funds and what you use it for, right?
Yeah,
I
precisely.
mean, the best example I can give you is University of Colombo. Our faculty department of economics has one of the best lecturers ever, right? They go and give guest lectures like abroad into so many universities. But the reason as to why we keep getting marked down on a global platform is because we don't have enough funding for research, right? So these technicalities can be combated so easily, provided that the government and the education ministry really budgets to the education system a bit better, and and instill certain values in the kids as well. Because right now I know a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm going to get the degree from this University of Colombo or whatever, but I'm actually planning on migrating as well. I'm not saying migrating is a bad thing, but I feel like you should be able to give back as well.
Yeah, especially when it's a welfare state where you're paying or studying out of public money. Yeah, I actually have something to ask. Like it's a multifaceted question. The first part of it begins with the mindset or rather culture that exists between these university students in state universities, and that what I mean by that is we all know in the last 20 years there have been quite a few attempts to bring in medical colleges, and they were opposed because students felt, look, we worked hard for our results and we got in, and you can't just pay money and enter your way in, right? So do you think, first part, I'll get to the second too, do you think students from the circle would be opposed to the idea of universities established by the government or rather privatized, which allows or focuses on international students, using it as a gateway similar to what Nottingham and whatnot does in Malaysia? That is the first part of the question. And the second thing is, if it does come, do you really think it would disrupt or rather make life difficult for those who really work hard and enter in, given the fact that look, universities aren't going to take every Tom, Dick and Harry. Everyone has to work relatively hard. I mean, look, someone might have, like, I'm talking about IGCSEs, I mean A levels, someone might have 4 A stars and the next person might have 3 A stars and A, right? Just because he has an A instead of an A star doesn't mean he's a bad student. He or she's a bad student. They're impressive students. It's just they missed out in one little bit. So what's your take on this?
That's a really interesting question. So I think the whole issue you're talking about is like the side-term issue, right? So with side-term issue, I think more than kids being completely opposed to the I mean, I'm sure there were other extremities as well. But from what I understood, at least from the people who told me about this, was that they were opposed to the fact that there weren't sufficient standards in place to get these kids into the faculty, right? So the issue there is for medicine in particular, because it has to do with someone's health. You need to have certain standards in place in terms of the grades by which you, the minimum requirement that you come into. So I think Saitam was unable to fulfill that.
I mean, it was certainly a political issue. Yeah, it was certainly a political issue because we really are, because that's what they say. We really aren't, at the end of the day, we can't pinpoint and say, look, that is the fundamental reasons. We can't say there were outlays. I mean, if you think about it, right, we have students who come in from Georgia, who come in from Ukraine, or state universities in Russia. I mean, what makes us think a university from there has any better standard than a private university in Sri Lanka? I mean, look, see, if you know doctors across the world, you can confidently say that Sri Lankan doctors are some of the most sought after Southeast Asian doctors because of the rigorous scales that we keep, and just how much we cut on them. So, what's your take on it? Continue. Sorry for.
No, that's fine. No, no, I totally agree with that. So, like, that's the thing. So, there are a lot of double standard issues there as well, because even after Saitam, I think, promised to revise their whole system by which they get the students in, they were still unsatisfied with Saitam. They were like, no, we really don't want it to exist at all, right? So, this mentality is there not in the medical faculty alone, but throughout the state university system. That's how this whole ragging system comes into play at times as well. This whole elitist versus underprivileged crowd, right? That sort of a system is still there. And I think it's because of the fact that it kind of boils down to how people are perceived, or like perceived like state university systems at a very young age. Like, I know for a fact that they're glorified to like such extent where if you don't get into state university, they are looked down upon, right? That's the truth, unfortunately. I'm saying it's evolving out of that system because of more private universities and people having access to education abroad. But state universities are kind of like the be all end all for a lot of families, and I get from where they're coming from as well, right?
Yeah, you want your kid to study at Royal and then have a law degree from University of Colombo, become a second you know who.
So it's the thing. So I think for them it's like one, like, self perception and the glory that's attached to it. And for those of the rural communities, for them, they don't have money to, I mean, obviously they don't have enough money to send them to like some UK university, right? I mean, to be honest, even I, who come from middle class family, I don't think I want to ask my parents to spend so much of money either, right? It depends on how you value it. That's a different story. Um, so with that mentality, you kind of grow up to believe that anyone who doesn't get into university is not the best, and anyone else who tries to pursue education otherwise is also a failure. That mentality is going to be there. um, so the moment someone steps foot into that ego, you're compelled to look down on them and be like, you can't exist. We are the it crowd, we are the academic elitists of the country, kind of thing. So that's kind of that's what happened more or less in the medical faculty incident as well. I feel like people should have been a bit more open-minded for sure, because it's not like the end of everything. Because if economics, law, and all of the social sciences can have private universities, I don't understand why medicine can't have the same thing, right? If you have, yeah, exactly. So I feel like there's a lot. I mean, it's a typical South Asian culture where you need to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. So like that's like the biggest thing in the world. That's like the shit. So it's like if you can't.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to bleep that. You know that, right?
Ah, shit. Anyways, so like my point stands. So like it kind of is like the be all end all of your occupation. So it boils down to perception. At the end of the day, like how you are taught to perceive state universities, how you're taught to perceive private institutions. So it's that mentality. So my thing is, at the end of the day, private institutions are fine provided there is sufficient like standardizations. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you for that, Chiara. So, next question for you is: do you think the whole ZSCO system is fair? Do you think the way it's done makes most sense to the people who are in the rural country, or do you think that people from the rural parts of Sri Lanka have an added advantage that they shouldn't have? Like, what is your answer about the ZSCO system to equalize things?
So the basis of Business Core system is, again, it's to benefit those who are underprivileged to sort of get a chance shot at like great universities within the country, right? So on that premise, I would say it does give a good opportunity for them, because they're able to seek education facilities that's in their area not, accessible. But from a broader perspective, I feel like it's still unfair because kids who do get good results, for example, let's say that they get 3 A's, even they themselves sometimes can't get into university in Colombo. One of my closest friends, she got 3 A's, I got 2 A's and 1B. My Z score was higher. I got into the University of Colombo, but she didn't, right? So on that logic, right, I feel like it's unfair, and the best way to combat it is have more universities have better facilities across the country than to dump hundreds of people into one university in central Colombo or something like that. You know. So yeah, that's my opinion on EZ score system.
Thank you. I would say it's controversial, but that's probably how I feel about it too. I actually think it's quite fair, like what you said, because we can't penalize students for really performing well just because they're not from a certain place. And for us to also say that, look, somebody who has like 3 C's to enter into an engineering faculty, while someone who has 3 A's and isn't as good, who enters in who can't get into an engineering faculty, like we can't say it's fair to the person who worked so hard, right? And we also really can't say that a person who has 3 C's is somebody who worked to their fullest potential in their given from what they've been given. And I think it makes less sense now than ever before, because hear me out, right? A lot of people in a lot of education centers are done online, right? And it's not like we're paying an arm and a leg, like we do for these private tuitions for like the international syllabus, where we pay literally an arm and a leg. But I think for A levels, where it's done through mass class, it's relatively more affordable. And I think that education access is slightly better in that regard, and its need, or rather to the extent to which it is needed, it seems to be perishing. I think of that in that way too. Shihara, a question for you now, that is on a more personal basis. As somebody who worked while you were pursuing your first year of your degree, you worked at a researching institute, and you also are part of multiple volunteering groups, hype for one example. How are you able to manage all of that while having the degree? Because I think a lot of people strive to diversify their time in college to have a good outcome, straight out. They are the most gleaming intern applicant, right? A lot of people try to do that, but they fail because they're unable to manage things altogether. How were you able to keep that balance?
Um, it's really hard for me to give a straightforward answer to that because one is I have a very YOLO approach to life. It's just like I only get to live once, so I was going to make the most of it. Um, s- you know, so like my reason, I mean, I'm not doing any of my like internships or whatever to gain some sort of university leverage here because to be honest, I'm not getting any either way. But I feel for me personally, I've always liked to do multiple things because I feel like my time management is much better that way. I did it in school. I've become very used to that system. So I do the same at university as well. I know university is a very different place. It's not the same as school because school you could still manage, but university there will be a time where you will have to cut back on stuff. So I'm doing that progressively. Um, but until such time, I think my best advice for anyone who wants to balance it is first try it out. You never know what you can do until you do so, and do what you like as a side gig. Maybe at university, sometimes you'll have to just suck it up and do certain things that you don't want to do. But on the side, do something that you like. It can be a sport, it can be volunteering at some animal shelter, or it can just be working at another place. But just whatever you like to do, do. And just diversify your portfolio and your skill set by doing so. Because my first internship is very different to what I ever thought I'd ever do, which is market research. And that has a lot to do with sociology, which is which I'm not doing that in university. But it still helps you to like do a lot of other things. So that's my go-to advice to anyone who is a bit reluctant or wants to do a lot of things while being at university. So just go for it and just you never know what to do. But yeah.
I have this final question to close it all off, and that is, why do you think it's important for you to stay in the country and prosper that way rather than to look towards going outside? Like, why do you think it's, I mean, obviously, personal reasons aside, maybe family or whatever, but do you feel a responsibility to this country? And if so, why?
I do actually. I feel like it's an ultra important question. In Sri Lanka, I feel a lot of us. I feel like the Sri Lankan system is such that we don't have an entrepreneurship drive. It's very rare to find people who do. And we have this whole mindset that government has to give us, but we really don't feel obligated to give back, right? I was, yeah. So I was brought up in a family. My father is, of course, like is very hell bent on me leaving the country, but my mom is has been very headstrong in driving this entire perception that you need to stay back, you need to give back. And for me, I have also kind of realized that I should, because I'm capable of doing so, and I like to think of myself as someone who can do something, and I want to give back. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be so hard to go about it, because in a system that's so rigid and outdated, it's going to be a really tough task. But I don't mind even going abroad, getting some experience, coming back, and sharing all of that human capital here, because I feel like the country needs it. And if more people like me chooses to do that, I feel like Sri Lanka can go to so many places, because there is so much potential, so much of work that's being done even right now in the private sector. Public sector needs like a huge, boost, but we still can do a lot of things. And if you choose to migrate, that's your call. That's an entirely different story. But I feel like if you think you're capable of doing something, if you have benefited a lot from the free education system Sri Lanka gave you, I feel like you should consider, giving something back, because there's always something that you can do. It doesn't mean that you get the opportunity outright freely. You'll have to hunt for it, or maybe create it by yourself. But I feel like it's worth it. It's very rewarding. I mean, I have seen what my parents have done, and that has been very inspiring. And I want to do the same thing and do better as well. So,
Thank you for that, Shiara. My take on this is that revolutions aren't won by people who express their opinions just blatantly. Revolutions, or rather changes in a country, changes would be a much better word, isn't won over a single night. It's won progressively, and it's won through determination and effort. We've got to do our best to improve standards for ourselves. We can't really expect people to do that. We can't blame it on a government and expect centralized systems to work for it. We got to work for ourselves. So I do also believe in a system where people are given the opportunity to work to their potential and to not feed off of tax money. That's something I hate. I genuinely I don't I hate people who feed off of tax money, in the sense that people who don't deserve it. There are people who are maybe, let's say, single mothers or widowed parents, or elderly members of society, veterans. Of course, they do deserve the care of the state, because they have a responsibility towards them. But those who utilize the benefits that the state gives them and yet never returns anything because they're simply lazy. Uh,
or they don't feel obligated to do it, not necessarily because, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. A lot of inefficient government sectors where people don't find the necessity to work hard for it to benefit it. I mean, like, a simple fact is the sheer volume of loss versus profit the IOC made against CPETCO. I mean, that should prove or tell something, with much fewer number of petrol sheds, right? And obviously, a lot had to do with the government, the way in which the government operated over the modus operandi over the last maybe 2 years. But it has a lot to do with it. But at the end of the day, we can't deny the fact that public and government officials had or didn't have a part in improving its growth. So I do stand with you on that regard. And to those who are going abroad, if you do feel like that's where your uh, interest or career goal is, no harm in that. That's each person's option. We do live in a country where everyone has the opportunity to go either here or there. But I do believe it's important that just as many people going need to come back in the sense that we need to have because we go as overseas, or rather we go as foreigners to different countries as expatriates, and live in much dire situations. And what I mean by that is much less privileges, and less safeties and guarantees, and always the fear and panic of immigration, right? But I don't think this is something that foreigners who come to Sri Lanka have to face. But what I mean to say is, we also need to be a country or a system where at the end of the day, Sri Lanka must be considered a place where, oh look, I want to migrate there. I want to live a different kind of life. I want to live with the nature. I mean, working on our benefits, and move there. I think that's where we should stand at the end of the day. Thank you, Shrihara, for being here. Very enlightening conversation as usual. A lot of, yeah. Somehow, all our banter over the last few years has made some sense on camera today.
I know, right? And very concise compared to.
Oh, for the love of God, yes. Yes, but here's the thing, right? You guys don't know. I have Soshihara and I are having a call over like through our computers, and we're recording it on our devices. So anytime one of us realizes, okay, I'm going way too much, we just like stop. So we're doing that too, because we realize how much we have a tendency to go over.
Today's very controlled.
Today is very controlled, and thank you for staying with us for 40 minutes. Enjoy the few podcasts that we'll be having next, the solo podcast that we'll be coming up with next. And by we I mean myself, reporter, editor, creator, marketing, all by myself. So I am we. And enjoy the new segment of shows that, or rather shorts that we have on YouTube, on IGTV, on TikTok, which is what we call less than 60. It's something I'm trying out new. And yeah, enjoy everything that we have to give, and subscribe, like, share, the whole shebang. And see you guys soon.